Most people are told their blood work is normal, but normal is not optimal. I'm Tanya Malik Chawla, and this is Biology by Design. Your biology is not something that happens to you, it is something you design. So let's get started. I reviewed the biomarker data from 43 women, aged 36 to 60. Every one of them came to me with symptoms they had been told were normal, or maybe hormonal, or simply the results of getting older. But here's what the data actually showed. 72% were insulin resistant by optimal ranges. Not pre-diabetic, not flagged by a standard panel, insulin resistant, years before their glucose would ever move up. 0%, not one woman, had DHEAS levels within optimal functional range. Not one. 78% had elevated homocysteine, a methylation and cardiovascular marker that predicts cognitive decline, vascular damage, and accelerated biological aging. 68% had elevated RDW, a direct biological age marker. This is one of the 9 inputs into the PhenoAge calculator. 72% of vitamin D results were below the functional optimal threshold. Vitamin D functions as a steroid hormone, not a vitamin supplement. And perhaps the most striking, 55% of the women in this cohort who were under the age of 43 already showed signs of insulin resistance. This was years, and in some cases a decade before perimenopause would begin. This is not a perimenopause story. This is a story about what happens to the Indian female body in the years and decades before perimenopause, and what menopause then inherits. Today, I want to talk about a question that changes everything, about how we understand Indian female aging. The question is not what does menopause do to the Indian female body? The question is what state is the Indian female body in when menopause arrives? These are not the same question, and the distinction between them is the difference between managing the transition and actually understanding why some women deteriorate rapidly while others navigate it with minimal disruption. The current clinical narrative frames female midlife decline almost entirely through the ovarian hormone loss. Estrogen drops, progesterone drops, symptoms follow. The treatment, therefore, is hormonal replacement. What the data from my clinical practice suggests is that this framing captures perhaps half of the picture, and it misses the half that is the most responsive to intervention. Because by the time ovarian decline begins, many, if not all Indian women are already metabolically depleted, already anabolically compromised, already insulin resistant, already running on a fraction of their physiological reserve. Perimenopause does not create this state. Perimenopause exposes it. The data I'm about to present comes from a retrospective observational review report of 43 women who presented to my practice of system-based health consultation. Age 36 to 60, mean age was 45, median age 43. Presentations included fatigue, weight gain concerns, hormonal symptoms, metabolic dysfunction, sleep disruption, and general health optimization. The biomarkers I evaluated included fasting insulin, triglycerides, DHEAS, homocysteine, ferritin, vitamin D, BUN and creatinine, RDW, a critical methodological note before I present the findings. Every marker I'm about to discuss was evaluated against Biology by Design optimal ranges, not standard laboratory reference ranges. This difference is fundamental because standard reference ranges tell you whether you are diseased. Optimal ranges tell you how your biology is performing. And in this cohort, applying optimal ranges reveals a picture that standard reference ranges would largely classify as normal. That is precisely the point. The first finding is insulin resistance. And I want to be specific about how I'm defining this. Standard clinical practice flags insulin resistance when fasting glucose elevates typically above 100 milligrams per deciliter, or when HbA1c approaches 5.7%. By the time fasting glucose is elevated, insulin resistance has typically been present for 10 to 15 years. In functional medicine, we measure fasting insulin directly. Our biology by design optimal is below 5 microunits per milliliter. This is the level at which insulin sensitivity is genuinely functional. In this cohort of 43 women, 72% had fasting insulin above our optimal. 42% had fasting insulin above 10. These are not women with diabetes. Many of them had completely normal fasting glucose. This standard panel showed nothing, but their fasting insulin told a completely different story. Now here is the finding that I want you to sit with. When I broke the cohort down by age group, women age 53 and above, 80% insulin resistant. Women aged 43 to 52, peak perimenopause, 92% insulin resistant. And women under the age of 43, 55 already insulin resistant. These are not perimenopausal women. These are women with a decade or more before menopause begins. And more than half of them were already insulin resistant. From a longevity medicine perspective, this is significant. Insulin resistance is the upstream driver of accelerated biological aging, of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, adipose tissue accumulation or belly fat, hormonal dysregulation, and critically amplified perimenopausal symptom burden. It is not that menopause creates insulin resistance. It is that a woman who is already insulin resistant enters menopause with her metabolic buffer already depleted. And estrogen's protective effect on insulin sensitivity disappears exactly when she can least afford it. The second finding concerns what I call anabolic reserve. Anabolic reserve is the body's capacity to build, repair, and regenerate. It is primarily expressed through skeleton muscle integrity, through protein synthesis capacity, and the hormonal signals that support them. When anabolic reserve is low, the body shifts from building to breaking down. This is the catabolic state, and in this cohort, it was near universal. I used two proxy markers for anabolic reserve. First, BUN, blood urea nitrogen, and creatinine. BUN is produced when protein is metabolized. A BUN below 12 milligrams per deciliter in a non-disease context almost always means the patient is not consuming adequate protein to produce sufficient urea. It is a protein intake proxy. In this cohort, 67.6% of the women had BUN below biology by design optimal floor of 12. 51% had BUN below 10. Creatinine is a byproduct of muscle creatine metabolism. Low creatinine in the absence of kidney disease signals low muscle mass, specifically low skeleton muscle turnover. It is, for all means and purposes, a muscle reserve proxy. In this cohort, 72% of the women had creatinine below the biology by design optimal floor of 0.8. 47% had creatinine below 0.7. Now, read these numbers together. 45.5 of the cohort showed what I call dual catabolic signal. BUN below 12, creatinine below 0.8 simultaneously. Nearly half of the cohort showing both markers of anabolic systemic collapse at the same time. And the lifestyle histories confirmed exactly what the markers were suggesting. Chronically low protein intake was the norm. This was not the exception. Minimal to none progressive overload resistance training. Majority of these women did either low intensity physical activities like walking and yoga or nothing at all. These activities maintain mobility but does nothing to build or preserve muscle mass, metabolic flexibility or mitochondrial health. From a functional medicine and longevity perspective, this is one of the most important findings in this data set because skeleton muscle is not a passive tissue. It is an endocrine organ. It produces myokines, anti-inflammatory signaling molecules that regulate insulin sensitivity, your immune function, and your cognitive health or your brain health. It is the primary site of glucose disposal. It is mechanically essential for bone density, and its loss accelerates every process we associate with aging. These women were not deconditioned. They were under-muscled. And in most cases, they had absolutely no idea because no one had told them that muscle is a longevity, metabolic, or brain organ. The third finding concerns DHEAS, the primary adrenal androgen. This is the precursor from which estrogen, testosterone, and other androgens are synthesized. DHEAS does decline with age. We know this. It is well established in the longevity literature. Peak DHEAS typically occurs in the mid-20s and declines approximately 2% per year thereafter. What I was not prepared for was the extent of the decline in this cohort. The biology by design optimal ranges for DHEAS in women is 275 to 390 micrograms per deciliter. This is the range associated with adequate anabolic reserve, resilience under physiological stress, cognitive protection, and hormonal precursor availability. In this cohort of 43 women, mean DHEAS 95.2 micrograms per deciliter. 0% of the cohort was at the BBD optimal range. Not a single woman. 64% had DHEAS below 100. 48% had DHEAS below 75. 28% had DHEAS below 50, which is critically depleted. From a functional medicine perspective, DHEAS is anabolic currency of your adrenal system. When it collapses, several things happen simultaneously. First, the hormonal precursor pool shrinks. Less DHEAS means less substrate for estrogen and testosterone synthesis, which means the ovarian decline of perimenopause hits an adrenal system that is already depleted. There is no backup reserve. Second, recovery capacity fails. DHEAS is an anti-catabolic signal. It opposes the catabolic action of cortisol. When DHEAS is critically low and cortisol is chronically elevated, the body is in a sustained catabolic state with no counterbalance. And third, cognitive protection is reduced. DHEAS is a neuroprotective molecule. It supports brain-derived neurotrophic factor production and reduces neuroinflammation. Low DHEAS is associated with increased cognitive or brain decline in aging women. The standard explanation for low DHEAS in perimenopausal women is that it's simply age-related, and that is only partially true. But in the cohort where the mean age is 45 and the adrenal androgen system is uniformly collapsed, the functional medicine question is, what has been chronically activating this cortisol axis and suppressing DHEAS production for years preceding this presentation? Chronic stress, chronic inflammation, chronic sleep deprivation, chronic catabolic state, all of this driving stress. The same drivers were seen across the entire data set. Now the fourth finding, homocysteine. Homocysteine is produced as a byproduct of your methionine metabolism. In a well-functioning methylation cycle, homocysteine is effectively recycled. When methylation is impaired because of B12 deficiency, B6 deficiency, folate insufficiency, or an MTHFR gene variant, homocysteine builds up. High homocysteine is independently associated with cardiovascular disease, brain atrophy, cognitive decline, endothelial damage, accelerated biological aging, and impaired thyroid hormone metabolism. In this cohort, 78% had homocysteine above the biology by design optimal of 9, 54% above 12, and 21% above 15. From a longevity medicine perspective, homocysteine above 9 is not a minor finding. A 2010 study in New England Journal of Medicine demonstrated that vitamin B supplementation reducing homocysteine slowed down brain atrophy in patients with mild cognitive impairment. This is a modifiable marker. And in this cohort, 3/4 of the women were above the threshold at which risk begins. Now the fifth finding, and this is one that was not published in my paper, but it is important. RDW, red cell distribution width. RDW measures the variation in size amongst red blood cells. When cells vary significantly in size, which is elevated RDW, it signals either nutritional stress, inflammatory stress, or cellular aging. By the way, RDW is one of the 9 markers in the PhenoAge biological age calculator. This was developed by Dr. Morgan Levine at Yale. It is a direct cellular aging signal. And in this cohort, mean RDW was 14.1%. A biology by design optimal is below 13%. 68% of the cohort was above this threshold. 31% was above 14, which is significantly elevated. These women were being told their complete blood count was normal. And by standard reference ranges, RDW up to 14.5% is classified as normal, but from a longevity medicine perspective, an RDW above 13% signals that cellular aging is outpacing cellular repair. Read alongside the low anabolic reserve, the low DHEAS, and insulin resistance, the RDW findings suggest that these women were not just metabolically compromised, they were biologically aging faster than their chronological years. Two more findings from this data set. Neither were prominently discussed in my published paper, but both are clinically significant from a functional medicine perspective, so I'm going to cover them here. Number one, vitamin D. I want to be precise about this. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. It is a steroid hormone precursor. Its receptors are found in virtually every cell type in the body. It regulates insulin sensitivity, immune function, muscle protein synthesis, hormonal signaling, and inflammatory pathways. The standard range threshold is 20 nanograms per milliliter. This is the level at which only deficiency diseases like rickets or osteomalacia are prevented. It is not the level at which these biological systems function optimally. A biology by design or functional medicine optimal ranges is above 50 nanograms per milliliter. In this cohort, 71.8% were below the optimal of 50. 30.8% were below 30, clinically deficient by most standards. 10% were below 20, that is severely deficient. Despite living in one of the most sun-abundant countries in the world, this is the Indian paradox that most functional medicine practitioners have been documenting for years. The GC gene variant that impairs vitamin D transport is more present in South Asian populations, and our skin pigmentation reduces UVB conversion efficiency. I myself carry the GC gene variant, and that is why supplementation at 5000 IU of D3 with K2 daily is something I ensure happens consistently. For this cohort of midlife women, vitamin D insufficiency means impaired insulin receptor sensitivity, reduced muscle protein synthesis signals, compromised immune regulation, and worsening of the inflammatory burden already present across the dataset. I now want to talk about ferritin. Ferritin represents iron storage, not circulating iron, but its storage. The iron stores determine whether iron-dependent enzymes, including the thyroid conversion enzymes we discussed in the previous video, have the cofactor they need to function. In this cohort, 62.9 had ferritin below the optimal range of 50. 51% had ferritin below 30. 20% had ferritin below 15, which is critically depleted. A ferritin of 25 is classified as normal by most Indian laboratory reference ranges. A ferritin of 25 means the patient is chronically fatigued, losing hair, recovering poorly from exercise, and potentially converting thyroid hormone inefficiently. But because her blood count shows normal hemoglobin, she is told that she is fine. Let me now bring this data together into what I believe it is telling us. The traditional model of female midlife decline believes things are sequential. Ovarian output declines, hormones fail, and symptoms follow. The clinical response, therefore, is replace the hormones. What this data set suggests is something completely different and something that changes the clinical conversation significantly. These women did not arrive at my practice with depleted physiology because of menopause. They arrived with depleted physiology that had been accumulating for years, in some cases decades, before ovarian decline even began. Chronically low protein intake had eroded their anabolic reserve. Minimal resistance training had allowed their skeleton muscle to atrophy. Early insulin resistance had created a metabolic environment in which every hormonal signal was working against a background of glucose stress. Chronic stress had suppressed DHEAS and elevated cortisol until the adrenal androgen system was uniformly depleted. Nutritional deficiency, iron, vitamin D, B vitamins had degraded the cofactor system that everything else depends on. And then menopause arrived and removed estrogen's protective effects on all of these systems simultaneously. This is not a hormone story. This is a resilience story. The women who navigate menopause with minimal symptom burden are not lucky, they are metabolically resilient. They arrive at ovarian decline with adequate muscle mass, functional insulin sensitivity, sufficient DHEAS, replete nutritional status, and controlled inflammation. So when estrogen fails, their system has the reserve to adapt. These women who deteriorate rapidly are not hormonal failures. They are metabolically depleted. And the depletion began long before the first hot flush happened. From a longevity medicine perspective, the intervention window for female aging is not perimenopause. It is the decade before that, the 30s and the early 40s, when the patterns are established. This is when the reserve is either being built or depleted, when the biology is still responsive to inputs. This is when biology by design matters the most. It is not as a treatment for menopause, as a preparation for it. If you're a woman in your 30s and 40s watching this, here is the functional medicine framework for building metabolic resilience before ovarian decline begins. Test the right markers. Fasting insulin, not just glucose. DHEAS, ferritin, vitamin D, homocysteine, RDW. These markers tell you the state of your biological reserve years before standard panels will show you anything concerning. Second, build muscle now. Progressive overload resistance training 3 times per week minimum. Got nothing to do with aesthetics. Skeleton muscle is your primary metabolic organ, your largest glucosal disposal site, and your primary anabolic reserve. You cannot replace what you do not build. And third, eat protein adequately. 2 grams per kilogram of your ideal body weight every single day. Forget the RDA recommendation. 97% of Indian women are below even the minimal threshold. If your bun is below 12, you are probably one of them. Next, manage insulin sensitivity proactively. Protein first meals, post-meal movement. If your fasting insulin is above 5, this is your highest clinical priority. Address your nutritional status as a clinical priority, not a lifestyle preference. Vitamin D, B vitamins, ferritin, selenium, zinc. These are not supplements. These are cofactors without which your biological systems cannot function. The biology design dashboard panel that covers all of these markers with the optimal ranges is available for you free inside the biologybydesign.app. Perimenopause will come for all of us. What it finds when it arrives is a design decision. Your biology is not something that happens to you. It is something you design.